Cowboys officially have used their franchise tag on George Pickens. The two sides are not close to an agreement. This is not expected to be a simple negotiation.
George is not going to accept $1 less, I wouldn't think, than top-notch money.
Make no mistake about it, we have long-term plans in mind for Pickens.
We've made a decision to have George play under the franchise tag. There won't be negotiations on a long-term deal.
George Pickens has, as Shefty told us he would, signed his franchise tag, so
all of this seems to avoid drama. Yeah, famous last words.
There's your rundown of the offseason news on George Pickens. Welcome into NFL Live, where we have Adam Schefter here to fill us in with more. Adam, what else can you tell us about Pickens?
Dan, this is a percolating situation that bears watching throughout the offseason. George Pickens wants a long-term deal that the Dallas Cowboys already have said that they're not going to give him this offseason. And in light of the fact that he won't get the long-term deal that he wants, it's fair to wonder if he could potentially seek a trade. However, the Cowboys also have said they're not interested in dealing George Pickens. So we have a team that is unwilling to pay him, unwilling to trade him, a player who's not happy, but he has at least on the franchise tender for now, which obligates him to be at training camp contractually. However, there is no end in sight right now to the standoff that exists between these two sides, though Pickens is under contract now.
What do you know? An offseason contract drama between the Cowboys and one of their star players. When have we ever seen this before? I'm Dan Graziano, joined today on NFL Live by Mina Kimes, Adam Schefter, as you just heard, and Andrew Hawkins. So let's start there with George Pickens, as he is the news of the day. He's coming off a career-best season across the board. Top 10 in the NFL last year in catches, yards, and touchdowns, all of which were career highs. And only Puka Nacua and Super Bowl MVP Jackson Smith-Njigba had more receiving yards. Cowboys, as you heard, have said they don't plan to work on a long-term extension this offseason. They're already paying CeeDee Lamb $34 million a year. So, Hawk, what do you make of Pickens' decision to sign the tag?
Yeah, it was the right move for Pickens. And I think for him, it gives him a security blanket of, look, worst case, you're playing on a franchise tag that pays you more than 3 times the amount of money that you've made in your career. This is not a former first-round pick, right? So in that situation, it's a great situation to be in, $27 million. The issue is that he's put up numbers that can justify him being a solidified number 1 receiver and being paid as such. But if he goes into this season, plays on the franchise tag, and has a repeat year of last year, and I don't mean on the field, I mean off the field, he will sign the biggest contract for a wide receiver in NFL history, and he will have earned it and answered a lot of questions.
Yeah, it's interesting that there hasn't been more smoke around a potential trade for Pickens, given what he did last year on the field, which makes me think that, Andrew, you're right. It is in his interest to do it again, because if he does, he will be, I think, rewarded quite handsomely. And as far as Dallas goes, last year they had a top 5 offense in football, 5th in EPA per play, 5th in success rate. Stat that I thought was really telling, they faced more too-high coverage than any team in the entire NFL. Teams desperately feared the combination of Pickens and Lamb, and then that would open things up underneath for the run game. So to me, it makes sense that you would try to keep him, even if it's not on a long-term deal, with the risk of losing him next year, because you know how good this offense is with him. And the bet is that they've made enough improvement on defense so that they can be a playoff team this season. But the offense, if it's anything like last year, should once again be a top unit in the NFL.
What's interesting about this whole situation is if we go back to last year when Pittsburgh was trading George Pickens, there wasn't a lot of interest in him across the league. And all the Steelers could get back for one of the most talented wide receivers in the league was a 3rd-round pick. Fast forward to this year, how often do we see a team come out in April and say, we are not signing our franchise player to a long-term deal? It's a very strange and unusual statement to make this early in the offseason. On the other hand, the talent of George Pickens is so rare and so undeniable that what he brings to that offense cannot be matched. So it's a strange situation that the two sides find themselves in. And Hawk, you said George Pickens should be happy about making $27.3, but I would say there are other receivers now making $40 million that he's looking at. And he doesn't have the security of a long-term deal where if he got a long-term deal, he would be double, triple the amount of money that he's scheduled to make this year, and he feels like he's earned it. So again, I don't know that there's a solution in sight. I don't know that George Pickens is going to be particularly pleased at playing this season under the franchise tag, as much as it is in his best interest to go out there, to ball out, have a great year, become a free agent when he could crush it on the free agent market a year from now.
Yeah, Cowboys basically telling Pickens, hey, great year, let's see you do it again, and then we'll talk again next year. They don't seem like they plan on trading him. Of their 7 picks in this year's draft, 5 were on defense, and the only pass catcher they took was in the 7th round. Let's get to some other top stories around the league, starting with some defensive help for Baltimore. Adam, what do you got?
How about Calais Campbell at the age of 39, returning to Baltimore on a 1-year contract? Calais Campbell from the draft class of 2008, the same draft class that produced one Andrew Hawkins as an undrafted free agent, now winds up back in Baltimore, where he played from 2020 to 2022. The Ravens tried to trade for him a couple of years ago, couldn't get him from the Miami Dolphins, now have landed Campbell on a 1-year free agent deal back to Baltimore. Meanwhile, Darius Slayton is dealing with a core muscle injury that required surgery that has knocked him out until at least training camp. Let's keep in mind, the Giants already are missing their standout wide receiver, Malik Neighbors, coming off a torn ACL. So they're down 2 wide receivers, which helps explain why they're talking to Odell Beckham Jr. and brought in Calvin Austin and drafted Malachi Fields. Meanwhile, the Steelers put on the UFA tender to Aaron Rodgers, and they did this so that if he happens to sign with another team, which I don't think anybody's expecting right now, the Steelers would get back a compensatory draft pick. And if the deal is not done with Rodgers by the start of training camp, July 22nd, he would be precluded from signing with another team. So it's a rare step for a team to put a UFA tender on a player. They communicated it to Rodgers. They let him know it was coming. You never know how he's going to react to something like that. But it doesn't change the fact that the Steelers are basically taking out insurance in the unlikely event that he does sign with another team.
And Steelers owner and president Art Rooney spoke yesterday. He addressed the team's decision to use that unrestricted free agent tender on Rodgers. Here's what he had to say.
The main thing that the tender gives us is potential for a comp pick, if Aaron would choose to go to another team. We don't expect that, but by the same token, you never know. We've been in contact with Aaron on a regular basis. He's been keeping us up to date on his plans, and even though I thought it probably would have been concluded by now, I think we will come to a conclusion here in the next few weeks.
Yeah, sure it will. I'm sure it'll be smooth and easy. Hawk, we just heard from Steelers ownership. What do you read into the team's approach here with Rodgers?
I think this is unexpected for them. This is an unexpected timeline from Aaron Rodgers. And so unexpected actions get unexpected reactions. And so they have to put this tag on them because it's the only way to protect themselves. Yes, from a comp pick, but also to try to make sure that, hey, if you're going to play, we want to give ourselves the best chance that it's going to be for the Pittsburgh Steelers, because they drafted as if Aaron Rodgers was going to be in the lineup. And all the actions they've taken this offseason is with the assumption Aaron Rodgers would be in the lineup. And so this makes a lot of sense from a security standpoint for the organization. And the hope is that, to everyone's point, Aaron Rodgers doesn't get offended by this action, which might feel like it's kind of backing him into a corner.
Yeah, I don't know why he would feel entitled to be offended. I don't want to project because there's no indication that he is, but completely understandable from the team standpoint. And I'll say this, Andrew, you said something that I think is worth noting. Everything they've done this offseason suggests not only that they expect Aaron Rodgers to be the quarterback, but I think they're moves that will set him up for success. Trading for Michael Pittman Jr. in particular, when they made that trade, I thought that makes so much sense for Aaron Rodgers, because at this point in his career, we know he's really rarely pushing the ball downfield, maybe opportunistically to DK Metcalf, but primarily he wants to work quick game, and Pittman is very good at that. Over the last 3 years, he is top 10 in catches, yards, catch rate, on throws under 10 yards. In fact, on throws under 10 yards, he's caught over 70% of passes, which is 7th best of any receiver in football. To me, that sounds like a perfect pairing with Aaron Rodgers. The wide receiver they drafted out of Alabama, too, Jeremy Bernard. Again, perfect as a wide receiver 3, working from the slot. Quick game. It all makes sense if Aaron Rodgers is the quarterback. If he's not the quarterback, then I don't know. It's hard for me to explain this entire offseason.
Well, I think that they prepared in the event that he's not the quarterback. They are counting, expecting, believing that he will return to Pittsburgh this season. But in the event that he doesn't, that he pulls a surprise, anything is always possible. This is a team that really believes in Will Howard, and they've brought him along. And Mike McCarthy has a reputation for working with young quarterbacks. They went ahead and drafted Drew Aller, who, if we were talking about Drew Aller a year ago, he was being discussed as a potential first-round pick. That didn't happen for him. The year didn't work out the way he wanted. So they do have a couple of young quarterbacks there to go along with Mason Rudolph. They feel like they have the talent they need if Rodgers doesn't come back. But it certainly sounds like they're counting and believing that he will be back here in the next few weeks.
We will keep you updated on this situation as it continues to unfold, or if it ever starts to unfold, all throughout the offseason here on NFL Live. But for the rest of the day, we're draft. We know all the big names, but what about the hidden gems from last week? Our resident wide receiver, Andrew Hawkins, has his eye on a few receivers from this draft class that might have gone unnoticed by a lot of people, but could turn into household names. Hawk, take it away.
Yeah, we're going to start in the third round with Zachariah Branch from Georgia. Listen, he's a diminutive slot. In college, they used him on a lot of gadget plays, screens, reverses, passes behind the line of scrimmage. But his speed and quickness, I think, translates to the ability to beat man-to-man. And when you get down to the Falcons, whether they have, whatever quarterback they go with, the ability to get instant offense is going to be paramount for them. And I think Zachariah Branch is a guy who's going to pop on the radar very early and often, and particularly end up being a household name in Atlanta. Next up, we're going Chris Brazzell Jr., speed guy, big playability. The question was, in college, did they give him enough route selection to truly show the kind of receiver he can be? Well, in Carolina, where he got drafted, he won't need to be. They have Ted McMillan on the other side, and for Bryce Young, do I have that down-the-field threat? Well, Brazzell is amazing in that department. He wins downfield. He wins on short routes after the catch, and he's a guy that fits nicely into their receiver room. Next up, we got Skylar Bell. This one I'm super excited about. He goes in the fourth round. Now, he comes from UConn, so he's used to the weather that you'll see in Buffalo. When you watch his tape, he's a guy that screams a number one receiver. Now, it's going to take him a little while to get there, but he is reminiscent of Stephon Diggs at times, the way he wins off the line of scrimmage. Contested catches, he has 10-inch hands, which are huge, and plays his ability to win 50-50 balls, can run every route out of the slot on the outside, was a volume guy, and will be a big threat for Josh Allen. Lastly, we come to Cyrus Allen. Now, for the Chiefs, I was hoping they wouldn't got a receiver earlier in the draft, but they waited to the fifth round, but the one they got, I think they're going to get a ton of value out of. Cyrus Allen popped on the scene at the American Bowl, did incredible at the Senior Bowl. I think he was a rare miss by not getting invited to the Combine. Had he gone to the Combine, I wouldn't be surprised if he would have came up the board in the second round. He's a fifth-round pick, but if you remember, Tyreek Hill was also a fifth-round pick for Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs. I'm not saying he's going to be that, but he is definitely going to be a productive wideout and an early contributor to this offense for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Certainly landed in a great spot if you want to be a productive wide receiver in the NFL with that coaching staff and that quarterback. Late round value at wide receiver is cool, but the Titans said, nah, we're not interested in that. We're going to take Carnell Tate with the 4th overall pick. Big move to boost their offense. Titans assistant GM Dave Ziegler spoke earlier this week on the team's thinking behind that pick.
At the end of the day with Carnell, we just had a very good, I think there was a consensus vision on what he's going to do, where he's going to play, how he's going to fit in, and what he's going to bring to this team. Carnell checked a lot of those boxes in that way where we're feeling we're really getting a complete 3-down player that can contribute on these critical downs and these critical situations, third down in the red zone. And so for us, having that vision, seeing that consensus, he was a clear guy for us to take, and we were excited about it.
3-down wide receiver sure sounds like what the Titans need. Cam Ward wasn't always on target in his rookie year, but even when he was, Titans wideouts struggled to catch the ball. It's on any down, but especially on first down, where they ranked 30th in the NFL. The Titans did in first down reception. So, Mina, what do you think of the fit here with Carnell Tate in this Titans offense?
I really like that they went this direction because while I think some folks think that's a premium or is maybe a little bit early for Carnell Tate, I would argue the importance of setting up Cam Ward, the young quarterback, for success in year 2 makes it worth paying that premium. And I've also heard people say, Carnell Tate, he's good, he's solid, does he have any special traits? He does. He catches literally everything downfield. On throws over 10 yards, he had a 71% catch rate, which was the most of any receiver in college football with 20 or more targets. It shows up in his contested catch ability. He catches great balls away from his body as well. He's phenomenal at tracking the ball downfield. And I just feel like that ability gives him a floor that's been missing in this Titans receiver group. I also like how it sets up the rest of the receiver group. They signed Wan'Dale Robinson from New York. I really like Wan'Dale Robinson. I don't like Wan'Dale Robinson as your number one wide receiver, right? So now he gets to play in the slot. He gets to work underneath. And suddenly, Andrew, him, Robinson, Tate, Robinson, Ridley, it all starts to make a lot more sense and fit together for me.
I completely agree, Minnie. You're hitting it on the head. They have every archetype in that receiver room, and that's what you need for a young quarterback like Cam Ward. Carnell Tate was the most pro-ready wide receiver in this draft for me, and I don't care what his 40 times said at the Combine. When you watch the tape, to your point, he does everything great. He does everything you can ask for, and he already plays like an NFL wide receiver, so he will slot in as the number one. And Calvin Ridley and Wan'Dale Robinson, now you have a core that Cam Ward won't have to bear the brunt of the pressure for production in the pass game, because now you have true weapons on all three wide receiver positions that can get open for you, catch the ball, and turn small plays into big plays.
Yeah, arrow up potentially for Cam Ward, who did, by the way, finish strong last season, 12 touchdowns and only one interception over the final 8 games of 20. Hey, just when you thought you were done with mock drafts, we've got another one for you. Jordan Reed's way too early 2027 mock draft was released today. For the order of the teams, just so you know, this is the inverse of the Super Bowl odds according to DraftKings. So these are not our predictions for how the season's going to turn out. And tell me if you've heard this before, the quarterback class is loaded. Jordan has 4 quarterbacks in the first round of his mock, led by Arch Manning, going number 1 overall to the Cardinals. Then he's got quarterbacks back-to-back at 3 and 4. Dante Moore to the Jets, C.J. Carr to the Browns, and Oklahoma State's Drew Mestemaker completes it at number 14 to the Steelers. And what do you know? Jordan Reed is here with us to talk about it all. Jordan, take us through your way too early 2027 mock, starting with the first pick.
Yeah, guys, there's a lot of excitement about this upcoming class, one of the most highly anticipated in recent memory, and that's because at the top of the draft, I have Arch Manning, the quarterback from Texas, going to the Arizona Cardinals. Yes, they just drafted Carson Beck in the 3rd round, but I still believe they're going to be looking for the quarterback of the future. I love the progression that Arch showed after a rough showing in the season opener against Ohio State. He just steadily got better as the season went along. Texas personnel is better up front as well as out wide, headlined by wide receiver Cam Coleman, who comes over from Auburn. I think they're going to be a really good pairing, and Arch is going to continue to show that progression that we saw midway through and then also during the back half of the year. So I look for him if he has a strong showing to have or be in consideration for the number 1 overall pick. Next, I have Dante Moore, the quarterback out of Oregon, who to some people surprisingly returned to school after having 20 starts. He's going to get to that magic threshold of 30 career starts if he starts all of next season, but he's very smooth, a traditional pocket passer that does have some more picks this upcoming draft. Next, a big surprise in my mock draft, but I think is going to have a huge upward progression this year, C.J. Carr, the quarterback out of Notre Dame. Somebody that was not on a lot of people's radar coming into the year last season, but he showed a lot of progression. Even against that tough Miami defense, I thought he flashed in spurts. Another player that I think is just going to steadily get better as the year goes along. Notre Dame lost a lot with their surrounding offensive personnel, but they do have some intriguing young players, and that is led by C.J. Carr. And then lastly, I think this is the biggest wild card of this year's quarterback class, and it is Drew Mestemaker out of North Texas, he's one of the best stories of this upcoming draft class, a 0-star walk-on for Eric Morris at North Texas. He is going to transition to Oklahoma State with Eric Morris, so he's staying with that coaching staff, a true gunslinger, which can be a bit of a gift and a curse with him, but you love the aggression that he plays with. Needs to limit the decision-making and the turnovers, but I think he's a player, if all goes as planned, he has a chance to climb into that top 5 to top 10 discussion in this upcoming quarterback class.
Exciting list of guys on that quarterback list about a year out from the 2027 draft. But assuming Arch Manning is the guy at number 1, and we're going to hear a lot more about him as the season goes along. Amina, among the teams that we have projected to be picking that high, who's actually done the best job setting themselves up to bring in a quarterback next year in the draft?
You know what's crazy? I think all three of the most likely teams, Arizona, the Jets, and the Browns, all made huge leaps in terms of setting up their quarterbacks for success. The Cardinals already had Harrison Jr., Wilson, Trey McBride invested in the run game. The Jets, as you see here, completely revamped their receiver group, getting both Sadiq and Cooper Jr. in the first round. They already have, I think, an ascending offensive line. But it's the Cleveland Browns that really caught my attention. You start with the receivers, Casey Concepcion, Denzel Boston. Earlier, Hawk talked about the importance of having different archetypes of receiver. To me, if you're building a receiver group like a basketball team, that's a great combination of receivers getting size from Boston, speed from Concepcion, to pair with Jerry Jeudy and Harold Fannin Jr. And then the offensive line, their first pick, Spencer Fano, who I think can play a multitude of positions. That offensive line was a real problem last season. It's a far cry from when you played with likes of Joe Thomas and Mitchell Schwartz manning the tackle positions. But they have invested heavily this offseason in that group, not only with the draft pick, but also bringing in Titus Howard, Elton Jenkins. So if I'm Arch Manning, pardon me, and we all know this is going to be a conversation given the family's history with, Eli Manning, crazy enough to say, I think I want to play for the Cleveland Browns, who, by the way, already have a great defense, Andrew.
Exactly. I couldn't agree more. Mina, if you look at what Andrew Berry and the Browns did last draft and now into this draft, you're exactly right. Yeah. They're setting the table there. Now, look, not only that, because you have Shedeur Sanders and Deshaun Watson who have to come in here and prove some things, absolutely. And I think if Shedeur plays really, really well in the early parts of the season and showed some growth, he could be the number one guy and get his chance to prove it with the supporting cast, to your point. That is a great young nucleus. Everybody you mentioned, on top of Quinshawn Judkins, on top of Isaiah Bond, who was another guy that had first-round grades on him last year that they got, on top of Denzel Boston and Casey Concepcion, who both had first-round grades. You're looking at a young offense that if Arch Manning was in position and the Cleveland Browns had their opportunity, that would be a place he'd want to go to. And as you know, the Haslam family, they're Tennessee people. They love Peyton Manning. They love the Manning family, as does every organization. So it could make a lot of sense.
Listen, I think that these teams knew what was ahead in 2027, and they were able to lay the groundwork for potentially drafting a quarterback next year. They didn't feel a sense of urgency to go out and use an early draft pick. Not that there were that many quarterbacks in this draft that they could have used that on anyway, but they didn't feel the pressure to get a quarterback early in this draft, knowing what's ahead in 2027. And yes, you never know how the draft class is going to develop and who's going to be out there. But the fact of the matter is, these teams already were eyeing that collection of quarterbacks. And I think that entered the mindset into making some of the decisions that they did on draft day 2026, because they know what's ahead in draft day 2027, when it wouldn't be a surprise to see all those teams jump right in the quarterback pool early on.
Yeah, Adam, the team that I think best fits Arch Manning, I look at the New York Jets, and I just look at their offensive infrastructure. The one position that they do need is a quarterback, but look at the two bookend offensive tackles that they do have in Olu Fashanu, Armand Membu. You already have Garrett Wilson there as well. You just drafted Omar Cooper Jr. and Kenyon Sadiq. And even though Breece Hall is playing on the franchise tag, we'll see if he's back in 2027. But I look at the one position that this offense is missing, and it's a franchise quarterback. So if I'm Arch Manning, I would love to be dropped into that situation in New York, just because I think the offensive personnel and the infrastructure is so great and it's so ready for a young quarterback to come in. I just look at that situation. I think it's absolutely perfect.
Jets have 3 first-round picks in next year's draft. That gives them the ability to maneuver around and move up if they want to do that to get their quarterback of the future. Quarterbacks aren't the only thing people are fired up about in next year's draft. Jordan, you got Jeremiah Smith, wide receiver, Ohio State, off the board at number 2 to the Dolphins. Pretty high for a wide receiver, but what's the case for Jeremiah Smith being an exception?
It is, and I mean, Jeremiah is a special talent. We've seen it since he stepped foot in Columbus, and these teams have shown that they're not scared to take wide receivers inside the top 5. We just saw Cardinal Tate go with the number 4 overall pick, and I think of all the Ohio State wide receivers that we've seen go in the first round, Jeremiah is he's clearly more talented, than all of them, you're going to hear the comparisons like Julio Jones, like Andre Johnson, when we're comparing his playing style and who he translates to and how he could translate in the league. And one other thing I would love to say is, I believe wide receiver is now a premium position. We're seeing all of these teams take wide receivers inside the top 10 just because having that true wide receiver one is something that is needed for your quarterback. So I look at Jeremiah Smith's talent and how he translates so well. I would have no problem taking him inside the top 5.
I mean, take your pick, Graz. He can do literally everything at the wide receiver position. He can play inside. He can play outside. He can win down the field. He can win short. When he came in as a freshman, it was as if you took Julio Jones in year 2 of his career and you made him a true freshman at Ohio State. That's how good he is. He is generational. When you watch his film, there's literally no flaws in his game. Now, anything can happen going forward, but when you look at the tape and judging by the foundation that we judge wide receivers off of, this guy is by far the best receiver prospect we've seen in a very, very long time. And no one in this year's class or next year's class really come close to what he can be, because he has a high floor and just equally a high ceiling. So he's the can't-miss pick, and he's also the one that could blow everything that we've seen from the wide receiver position out of the water.
No FBS wideout has more touchdowns or receiving yards than Jeremiah Smith since 2024, so obviously we'll be tracking his progress very closely. New on NFL Live, some news out of Baltimore today. Adam, what more can you tell us?
Dan, the big signing of the day was Calais Campbell, the 6-time Pro Bowl defensive end, returning to Baltimore, where he played from 2020 to 2022 on a 1-year deal. Played last year in Arizona, now will go back to Baltimore, the team that tried to trade for him at the trade deadline a couple of years ago. This will be his 19th NFL season. He turns 40 on September 1st. There are not many players who make it to 40. There are not many players who put their hand in the dirt, line up at the line of scrimmage, and make it to age 40. And he's been around and performing at an awful high level for an awful long time, which we'll get into here shortly.
Yeah, Adam, you hit it. He still plays at such a high level. ESPN has their pass rush win metric, which is the defensive player winning in 2.5 seconds or less. He was 3rd amongst defensive tackles last year. He consistently finishes in the top 5 in that regard. And now you're looking at a Baltimore defensive line that signed Trey Henderson, drafted Zion Young, who's a very tough, great against the run edge from Missouri. If Nnamdi Madubuike is able to come back from his injury and you compare him with Travis Jones and Calais Campbell, this could be the best defensive line that Baltimore has fielded in years. But that Madubuike injury is something to keep your eye on, because I do think it is one of the more pivotal stories of the entire offseason.
And my understanding is he's making good progress, and his doctors right now expect that he'll be back this season. We'll see if there are any setbacks to that neck injury that kept him out of action last year. But he right now, Nnamdi Madubuike is in a good spot moving forward. And as for Calais Campbell, if we go back to when he entered the league in 2008, take a look at some of the players who were in his draft class back in the day. They include, amongst others, the Falcons' president, Matt Ryan, Darren McFadden. You see some of the players that come. Gerard Mayo, Kevin O'Connell, the head coach of the Minnesota Vikings, Jamal Charles, Deshaun Jackson. And you know who else came out of that class? Andrew Hawkins was an undrafted free agent back in 2008. He's now in studio. Yep.
Hey, look at that.
Unbelievable.
I've been out of the league for 10 years, and he just signed a free agent deal with the Baltimore Ravens.
And he can still play. It's an absolutely incredible career with no end in sight.
Come on.
Very, very cool to see Calais Campbell still doing it as he's about to turn 40.